All right, everybody. We're about to get into what I guess we call YouTube mode on stream. So you know what that means? It's serious. Serious time ago. We gotta put on our detective hats and straighten our detective ties. And really pour over these cards with a magnifying glass, a fine-tooth comb, and search for clues as to what's actually good and what's terrible. So yeah. You know, I was going to do a whole YouTube intro there, but I think that's actually kind of the perfect YouTube intro. By the way, what's up, Wizards? It's Deb from the place. You've joined us live for Murders at Karlov Manor. Previews on Tuesday night. There were like 24 cards today. And even though there was, you know, some not super great cards, we're going to go from crap to slap here. I said I would try to make that a thing earlier on stream. I'm hoping that I can actually pull it off. We're going to go from the worst to the best as we usually do. And even though there were some like cards, that's probably the best way to describe it. You know, there were some really, really interesting cards today, even in the commons and uncommons. So without further ado, let's get terrible. Let's get to it and look at Rubble Belt Braggart right here. Why is he so teeny tiny? Why is he so teeny tiny? Let me try this again. Can I? Yeah, that's how we do it, baby. We're in. Now, Rubble Belt Braggart is 5 mana, 4 and a red for a 5/5 Vashino Warrior, and when he attacks, if he's not suspected, you may suspect him. I did it! Double, no, triple homicide in a building I set on fire. Yep, all me. That's the flavor text. That's the best part of this card. Otherwise, just a 5 mana 5/5 that might have menace if you want it to, I guess. But if you needed to block, it can do that too, or whatever you want, you know? So I think that's kind of neat. Hey, the turn you play it, it can block. That's something. The card's not great. Let's move on to Sanguine Savior. You might think this is awesome to my mind, right? Because Orzhov, this card has black and white. Dev classic. But no, this card's just kind of the definition of fine. This is 3 mana, 1 a white and a black for a 2/1 Vampire Cleric with flying and lifelink. It also has disguise for 2 Orzhov hybrids. And when it's turn face up, another target creature you control gains lifelink till end of turn. So, you know, 3 mana, 2/1 flying lifelink and a limited kind of cool, just common here that I'll probably end up putting in a bunch of decks, but I can't say it's good. You know, fine. I mean, it's fine. It's fine card. It's definitely no like Vampire Nighthawk, but it's fine. I guess it's fine. So I like the name, although I'm not really sure how he's saving anybody. He just like makes them gain lifelink, which like you would think that he would actually like return a creature to your hand, like I don't know, something like that. But no, it's, you know, lifelink's good though. I guess this could be great. This could be great in limited, but it's fine. Let's move on to let's move on to Vengeful Creeper. This is 5 mana, 4 and a green for a 5/5 plant elemental. You can disguise this for 5 and a green, and when you do turn it face up, destroy target artifact or enchantment an opponent controls. We're starting to cook a little bit here. It's not like the most impressive common in the set, but it is a fat boy who can give you a little bit of, you know, I guess I was going to say card advantage, but blowing something up is always nice when you do disguise. It costs an awful lot to disguise, but it's not like too far off of its casting cost, you know. So I don't hate this as far as a limited playable common goes, because anytime you get to blow something up on facing up something is, you know, it's probably at least worth pointing out. And if you do have enough mana, you're blowing out people on blocks with your 5/5 bodies. So he's probably at least decently playable there. We'll move on to Basilica Stalker. 6 mana for a 3/4 flyer. It's a little bit too much, right? 5 and a black for a Vampire Detective. 3/4 with flying. Whenever he deals combat damage to a player, you gain 1 life and you surveil 1. You can disguise him for 4 and a black. Yawn? I mean, the best thing about this guy, I guess, is a 3/4 flying body and limited, which is okay. And I mean, technically you're paying 8 mana if you disguise him, but it still kind of feels like you're getting a discount on his mana cost. And, you know, disguising 5, paying 5 mana for a 3/4 flyer on the flip up is basically on rate for this format. You know, we're seeing some like playable limited commons to open the video, but that's really about all I have to say about it. HDA Vigilante is up next. Another 5 mana common here. 4 and a white for a 4/4 giant soldier. When he ETBs or attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control with power 2 or less. This is getting slightly better. It's kind of a 5-mana 5/5 so long as you have a small enough dude on the table, which like shouldn't be too hard to engineer. And then he puts more power on the table, kind of. Just not like a super embarrassing card. Fine body and limited to be playing. That's probably about where, again, the discussion ends. You can tell I'm trying to get to the decent stuff today. I did feel like, you know, I always feel like it's worth talking about every card. And even with like some of the worst cards, you can come up with some fun stuff. But these are just obviously, all the cards we're looking at early today are obviously limited, kind of bread and butter. Sometimes you play them, sometimes you don't. They're kind of big bodies. They do a fun thing. You know, sometimes a fun disguise trick. Sometimes they're just a 5-mana 4/4, 5-mana 5/5. These are cards you will draft every now and again and even play just because like they're fat bodies. Fat bodies are good. Even the not fat body back there, you know, the 3/4 flying guy and the 2/1 flying lifelink guy. These are flying bodies. Like, you will play each and every one of the cards we've looked at today in limited, which makes them somewhat relevant. Let me put it that way. We'll move on to Bubble Smuggler. Just a cute little guy. Just an adorable little guy. What a name for a card. Smuggling bubbles. This is 2 mana, 1 and a blue for a 2/1 octopus fish. It's both. With disguise 5 and a blue. As Bubble Smuggler is turned face up, put 4 +1/+1 counters on it. By the time they noticed the missing vials, Glovax was 3 fathoms away. Okay, it's fine. They tried. That's a decent flavor text, but either way. This guy's just cool, man. A little 2 mana, 2/1. That's not like super embarrassing to play as like a 23rd card in limited, right? But if you do manage to disguise him, suddenly you get a really big dude, like 6/5 is pretty good. So 2 different modes on this dude in limited. He can be big, he can be small. So he can have like 1 good tentacle, or he can just have all 8 coming at you. And I like it. Mostly the entertaining thing about this card is the name. It's the name. That's about it. By the way, thanks to Catapoy for the 22 months you made the YouTube video. Good job. Oh, we got... really, though, thanks, man. You've been here, like, for longer than that, it feels like. But Rune Brand Jugler is up next. Little Juggalo here. He's 2 mana, a black and a red for a 2/2 human shaman. And when he enters the battlefield, suspect up to 1 target creature you control. You can also pay 3 of black and a red. That is 5 mana, and sacrifice a suspected creature to have target creature get -5/-5 until end of turn. Oh, what are you apologizing for? Catapoy's like, sorry about that. No, I love you. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But anyway, buddy. Yeah, just a 2 mana 2/2 with a removal ability on it seems okay, but whew, buddy, man, 5 mana and Sacketed? Jeez, wow, jeez. That is such a steep cost, but I think it's probably still worth playing, all things considered. It's not like terrible, so kind of like it. It obviously can suspect itself, and later on in the game, it can just sacrifice itself to kill a larger dude, and honestly, like, that's just relevant by itself. 2 mana 2/2 menace. Later in the game, it's a removal spell. Yeah, it's kind of starting to get there in limited. It's not bad. But 10 Street Gossip is up next. This is 4 mana. It's kind of surprising considering it's kind of just a mana dork, but it's 4 mana. 2, a green and a red for a 4/4 Vashino Advisor with Vigilance. And you can tap it to add both green and red, but you can spend this mana only to cast face down spells or to turn creatures face up. So disguise dude, I guess. But the cool thing about this is a 4 mana 4/4 Vigilance, and so you can attack with him. And then also use its abilities. He talking to Joyra? It looks like he's talking to Joyra. That's not Joyra. It's some other detective, but that's Joyra Hare. Anyway, I'm getting off topic here. He's cool in the disguise decks, but mostly just on stats alone, the dude is playable, you know? We've looked at a bunch of like 5 mana 4/4s and stuff already today, so just based on, again, stats and the fact that you get a fine keyword ability, the dude's pretty good, but comes down on turn 4, and usually, as far as ramp pieces go, I'm not too sure about that, but at least he can attack and then do 2/3 of the cost to face down a guy. That's a huge chunk of that cost. And obviously, you know, being able to attack on your turn and then face up dudes on your opponent's turn with some ramp after blocks, like, yeah, that's all good. So, again, very, very playable guy in limited there. But Furtive Courier. This is where we start getting the cards that I thought were a little bit more interesting in the uncommon and common slot. This is 3 mana, 2 and a blue for a 3/2 Merfolk Advisor, and it can't be blocked as long as you've sacked an artifact this turn. When it attacks, you draw a card, and then you discard a card. Really, really cool, man. Obviously works with clues in limited, but works with all kinds of stuff in other environments, you know. There's a bunch of cards in red that lets you sacrifice artifacts. So it goes really well with all of those. There's a bunch of creatures specifically that want you to sack artifacts and provide outlets for sacking artifacts aside from just sack clues, you know. So I feel like an Is It deck in Limited is going to go really well with this thing, so long as it drafts the right other cards to go along with it. But just a really neat thing, man. Not being able to be blocked is actually a nice little clock if you've got the right tools, again, to go along with it. And then this ability, too, attacks, loot, that's pretty slick, you know, for a 3-mana 3/2. I don't love the 3/2 stat line on a 3-mana creature in this environment because it's just going to run up against face-down creatures a lot and die to those on blocks and trade. But I guess that play costs them 3 mana too, so no harm, no foul. But this can at least get through those 3 mana, disguise creatures, and I think that that's kind of important too, as far as lining things up right and Limited. So I actually really like this. I'm a big fan of blue creatures that can't be blocked after like a condition is met, or sometimes just can't be blocked at all. It's one of my favorite lines of text in Magic, kind of low key. So kind of biased towards anything like this, and I don't think it's standard playable by any measure, but I do think it's a cool card in Limited. But Call a Surprise Witness is up next. We're going to look at 2 cards here that grant flying in what I think is kind of an interesting way. But Call a Surprise Witness is 2 mana, 1 and a white for a sorcery. Return target creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Put a flying counter on it. It's a spirit in addition to its other types. So I still think Helping Hand is probably the better card, and Helping Hand doesn't really see any play. I was really excited about that card, although reticent to be excited, and there was a reason for it. Flying Counter is great, and note that this doesn't return it to the battlefield tapped. It's just return it to the battlefield. That seems pretty relevant, or at least a little bit relevant. We've seen a bunch of these cards, recently especially, it feels like, that are mostly 2 mana this first line of text. Helping Hand broke the mold by being 1 mana, and still it sees no play. And it probably should. It's a fine card. It's just got to find a home. This tries to be different by putting a flying counter on the creature, which I actually think is pretty good. I think as far as 2 mana versions of this, like Recommission or whatever, this is... Flying counter is definitely not nothing. That's pretty good, but again, a card like this has to find a home. We're in a world now where 2 mana seems like too much for this ability. There's obviously opportunity cost involved. You have to make room for this card in your deck. So, especially in a format where you could just play Sarah Paragon, Extraction Specialist, a number of cards that one could argue are better because they add a body or whatever. So, I'm not super into the playability, but a flying counter, that's somewhat tempting. It really could be, but Fayflight is up next. This is 2 mana, 1 and a blue for an aura that enchants a creature. And the enchanted creature gets +1/+0 and has flying. All right. But this aura also has flash. And when it enters the battlefield, enchanted creature gains hexproof until end of turn. So I've got a 2 mana protection spell that also gives a buff and flying. That seems like good tempo to me. Really good tempo. It faces the same problem, though, as the last card, in that effects like this traditionally are going to cost 1 mana in competitive decks in Standard. We already have Shore Up. Shore Up's just a better card than this. However, I think there's a world where the mono blue tempo player really likes the idea of slapping this on a Tolarian Terror. It's not good in that deck for the most part because, Fairy Mastermind already has flying. Haughty Djinn already has flying. A lot of the creatures you play, some people play Delver. Insectoid Abomination already has flying. So, it's probably not great there, but I gotta admit, I kind of like the idea of putting this on a Tolarian Terror and getting 3 for 6 flying. But either way, this is actually a pretty decent protection spell, and it's almost a shame that all the best blue protection spells really just Shore Up. And for that matter, Slip Out the Back are just probably going to overshadow this because it's not a bad card. It's not a terrible card. Yo, SBMTG, I used to watch your videos all the time. Glad you're on Twitch now. Ohago. Ohago? El Panafresco. Good to see you, my friend. I'm glad you used to watch all the time. Hopefully, you'll start watching again. I've been putting videos out the whole time. I got like 2,000 videos on YouTube now. We're getting really close to it. So just come back. Come back to us, please. I am on Twitch, and I'm glad that your path has lit your way here. I'm glad that you're here, my friend. We'll move on to Dramatic Accusation. 3 mana, 2 and a blue for an enchantment. It's an aura that enchants a creature. And when it ETBs, tap enchanted creature. Enchanted creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. But here's where this is different from other blue, like 3 mana tap auras. You can pay 2 blue mana to shuffle the enchanted creature into its owner's library. Give him a hand. Give him a hand. That's fine. I'm clapping. I'm not doing like clapping my thighs together down here. I'm actually clapping. This is fine. This is Pauper playable? Pauper's a really strong format, but I do think that it's close. I don't know that you're like off base with that assessment. I think that this is like honest to God, like real blue removal or rebluval. That's what I've been saying. This is real rebluval, everybody. Being able to shuffle it in is very close to remove the creature. Depends on how long the game's going to go, you know? So it's a total of 5 mana to actually like remove the creature. But I don't know, like there's going to be whole games where you just slap this on a guy and you don't ever actually use the other ability, you know, just it being a 3 mana tap the guy down for the game is like good enough, you know? There's also going to be games where, let's say, you know, you put this on here, you put this on your opponent's creature, and then your opponent goes to break it. Like your opponent plays some sort of artifact or enchantment removal of some kind, or they play their Besage or whatever. They channel it. And you can respond to those, you know, castings and abilities by using this, you know. So your opponent kind of feels like they can't go to break it while you have open mana, or you're just going to basically counter the spell that they cast trying to break this enchantment, which I think is kind of neat, if nothing else. But I don't know, it's really cool. I feel like this might be basically the best version of this ever printed, but I feel like I'm missing something. I feel like I'm missing like a 2 mana blue tapper that was really good a couple of formats ago or something. And I just can't think of it off the top of my head, but I will say the ability to just effectively remove the creature is dope. That's a really, really good way to sort of pump up the power level of a card like this. And I also like that it doesn't cost 2 blue mana. A lot of times you see this ability or this card and it costs 2 blue mana and 1 colorless. This is 2 and a blue. Much easier to play in any limited deck. So I like the package here. You know, you said it was Pauper playable. I think that it's actually perhaps a cubable. I think this is actually a really interesting piece of rebluval for cube, if nothing else. Because I play like Icy Prison as rebluval in like old school cube, and Icy Prison is not a good card. But it's serviceable removal in like old school metas where there's not a whole lot of power creep, you know, depending on how you built your cube. And I think that this is really interesting addition to a lot of sort of powered down or pauper cubes. I like it. I like it a lot. But Detective Satchel is up next. Yeah, Commander could be. It really could be. Satchel is 4 mana, 2 a blue and a red for an artifact. When it ETBs, investigate twice. You can tap it and create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying. Why do I always say that? I should just say tap it, create a Thopter. Activate only if you sacrificed an artifact this turn. So it gives you 2 card draw. When it comes into play, obviously it costs you its whole mana cost again to get both cards. So 8 mana to draw 2 cards doesn't seem good, but obviously this kind of works in like Grixis Anvil decks in a very interesting kind of way. You know, sometimes the problem with Anvil, if you played Anvil, you know, is that like you really only get like the one guy a turn, and then if your opponent takes out that guy, sometimes you don't have any artifacts left to sacrifice to the Anvil on the next turn and get more value, and you know how this goes. So this is neat because it kind of doubles your output from Anvil in a turn. I kind of like that. It's just altogether cool, but 4 mana is probably too much for the package. But, you know, an artifact on the table that creates Thopters can create more than 2 Thopters in a game, and kind of gives you 2 card draw. You know, puts 3 artifacts on the table when you cast it and resolve it. That's kind of neat just in and of itself. Reminds me a bit of Tinker's Tote or whatever it was called from the last set. In that, again, it's a board in a box, puts a bunch of stuff on the table when you play it. Has a cool ability aside from that, you know, so I like it. I said board in a box, and the flavor text is a lab in a bag, and that's I don't know. Altogether, I think that it's a pretty cool little package, like card draw plus Thopters. I think it's a great card in Limited, to be honest. I think it's a sweet little slow roll card in Limited. That's either going to like let you fly over with the Thopters and be annoying and sting them a couple of times and help win the game, or like you get card draw and stuff to stave off their big flyers for a few turns. Just altogether, as long as you got some other clue generation, you should be getting a steady stream of Thopters. I like this card, but probably not playable outside of Limited. But a neat piece there that probably lines up in like interesting ways. But we'll move on to the split cards for today. You can read that. It's Flatsome and Jetsam. That's the name of Ursula's two like eel minions in Little Mermaid. This is the Flatsome side is 1 and a Simic hybrid, green or blue. For an instant, mill 3 cards, investigate. Jetsam is kind of ridiculous. 4 and then 2 Dimir hybrids. So you can pay 4 and then a blue-black or a blue-black, right? You know what I'm trying to say. 6 mana in total. Each opponent mills 3 cards. Then you may cast a spell from each opponent's graveyard without paying its mana cost. If a spell cast this way, it would be put into a graveyard, exile it instead. So obviously it's better in Commander where there's 3 opponents and you just get like probably ridiculous mana value off of this card. Very likely, but I don't think it's like horrible in Standard. I can't think of any deck I want to play it in anytime soon, to be honest. But if your opponent does have a gnarly card already in their graveyard, paying 6 mana to get their tally or just recast their Breach the Multiverse or whatever, whatever that card's called, I think that seems okay. It's not going to happen in every game. Like, there's going to be times though in your blue-black deck where like, okay, I've killed your Atraxa, so let me Jetsam that out of your graveyard. Seems gross, and you even get a little mana value out of doing that. So, and then Flotsam's not the worst card, mill 3 investigate. Okay, like there are decks that could use that. I don't love it, but it's okay. It's not terrible. It's all right. Still, Jetsam is a beating, especially in Commander, but in the right game state, obviously, this could blow up, but you're not going to encounter that game state in every game. And what does it actually do against aggro besides sit in your hand and be crappy? So I don't know. It's probably not amazing, but it is a cool card that definitely has real applications. What's up, Exalted Nerds? Good to have you in. Let's look at Hustle and Bustle, the other split card of the day. Hustle is an Is-It hybrid, either blue or red mana for an instant. Target creature attacks or blocks this turn if able. Okay. And then Bustle is 4 and 2 Gruul hybrids, so a green and a red, or green red or a green red. For a sorcery. Creatures you control get +2/+2, gain trample till end of turn. You may turn a creature you control face up. So this is actually the second overrun effect we've seen in green, and it could be in mono red too. Mono red does not get this effect very often, especially like +2/+2 and trample. Kind of neat. This card could just go in your mono red deck, which is neat. Making a creature attack this turn is tantamount to removal in some situations at the ceiling. And in other situations, it just makes it to where, like, I don't have to worry about that guy blocking because he's attacking. And then making a creature block this turn. I mean, same basic story, right? That is effectively removal in some situations, just lights out. So I bet that Hustle is a better card than it looks like. As far as Bustle goes, in Limited, this is just break the game open, and we've actually now seen at least 2 cards, to my mind, that do that, so it's neat. You get to 6 mana, you can definitely win the game, but really actually neat split card. I like it a good bit. Snarling Gorehound is up next. One of my favorite commons or uncommons of the day. You guys know I like little 1 mana nerdy dudes. It's a single black for a 1/1 dog with menace. And whenever another creature with power 2 or less enters the battlefield under your control, surveil 1. I'd offer your dog a treat, but I'm afraid I don't have any appendages to spare. But this is apparently Judith's dog, according to the flavor text, which is awesome. By the way, it does work if you cast a Judith. I don't think the new Judith, I don't remember her PT, but the old Judith from Ravnica costs 3 mana. It works off of that. But who cares? It doesn't matter. I hate that it's another creature. I wish that it was just 1/1 menace, ETB, Surveil 1. That would be a sick card. But honestly, this will probably trigger 2-3 times in a game. And getting those Surveils is pretty good. I don't know if it's good enough for Standard. I highly doubt it, to be honest. But I do think it's a really neat little card, man. And if you build your deck in the right way, you can still play some really high-powered dudes And they're just like 2-power dudes. Like Preacher of the Schism is a good example of a 3-drop that can come down with 2 power and still actually be like a really worth it card to play for 3 mana, like worth it to play over a card like Graveyard Trespasser or Gix or whatever in your deck. So there's actually like a world where this dude is playable, because Surveil 1 whenever you play a creature is kind of sick for just a 1 mana investment. But altogether, I don't know, man. It's not too shabby for a common. You're exactly right, Jules. And a 1/1 menace will probably get in a few times over the course of a game. So this could just represent a bolt and like 3 surveils before it blocks. Or like a bolt and 2 surveils before it blocks. And like I actually think that that's pretty good. It's a fair amount of value for a turn 1 play. So I think there's a case for him, but I'm not sure that he quite makes it. Either way, I like the design a lot. And I've been saying that about a lot of the cards in this set. This is what I was talking about earlier. Just one example, and I think we've already seen a few examples of this tonight, but I do see a lot of talk about, the complexity level in this set is high, and it seems a little convoluted and contrived in some ways. And, I've seen that comment from more than 1 or 2 or even 3 or 4 people so far, is that the themes are just a little wonky and all over the place, and they don't like the mechanics. And this is one of those cards, just like I feel like I've said on a dozen cards already this season, it's simple. It's simple. It's relatively powerful, but not like way too out of control. You can understand it easily. Even a beginner can understand the card. It's just cheap and fun to play. This looks like a fun to play with card and build around and stuff. Like, I feel like there's a lot of cards like that in this set, and I don't know. I just want to point them out when I see them. I think it's a cool little card. But Wisp Drinker Vampire is up next. This probably shouldn't be all the way up here in the commons and uncommons, but I bet when you saw this card today and you knew you were going to come watch this video later on tonight, you probably were like, okay, Dev's going to like this card. And I'm, guilty. Nothing if not predictable in this exact way. Wisp Drinker Vampire is 4 mana, 2, a white and a black for a 2/4 vampire rogue with flying. Whenever another creature with power 2 or less enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. You can also pay 5, a black and a white, and have creatures you control with power 2 or less gain death touch and lifelink until end of turn. Hot. This is 4 mana is probably too much for like a worse Corpse Knight, It's kind of a, why does it cost double what a Corpse Knight cost? And it's more restricted than Corpse Knight. I guess it gains you the life, whereas Corpse Knight doesn't do that. But for all you who don't know what I'm talking about, just Corpse Knight is 2 mana, or resolve colors for a 2/2 knight. I think it's a zombie knight or something. And whenever a creature comes into play at all under your control, your opponent loses a life. So I guess they felt like gaining a life was worth putting a power restriction on it and putting an extra 2 mana on it. I'm not really sure. But the activated ability is disgusting. It's a really fun activated ability and limited, I'm sure. Once you get to like 7 mana, you just win the game, which appears to be the rule in this limited environment. Oh, you're at 7? Well, right this way. They just unhook the red velvet rope. Okay, well, here you are. You can sign your slip now. 2-0. Turn it into the shopkeep. Move on to the next round. You hit 7 mana. But 4 mana is too much for this dude. In like competitive play, that's probably too much, but maybe you're going to try him. Maybe you're going to try him. I do like this little sub-theme we see in this set so far. In limited of like small dudes matter. I think it's a cool sub-theme, but 4 mana price is this thing way out of standard. No matter how much I love this first line of text, and to be honest, this activated ability, this dude's price out of standard. I also kind of like the idea of this card in Cauldron decks, because just to how powerful this activated ability is, but probably doesn't really go there either. But every time you see an activated ability like this, you're like, Agatha? So can at least bring it up, But Insidious Roots up next. I believe, yep, this is my favorite uncommon of the day. And to be honest, I think there's a pretty big power differential, a large glut of power differential, really, between this card and most of the lower rarity stuff we saw today. Let me take a quick sip. See, that was quick. Insidious Roots is black and green for an enchantment. Creature tokens you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. The card actually has more words on it. Whenever 1 or more creatures leave your graveyard, create a 0/1 green plant creature token, then put a +1/+1 counter on each plant you control. Huh? Like, good. It looks like a good card, man. This could have been rare. Right? Could this not have been a rare card? I'm fairly certain. Would have been fine. But I'm not complaining, like, whatsoever. This is an uncommon, and that's awesome. It does two, like, relatively distinct things that still synergize with one another, pay you off for doing different stuff. You know, you want a ramp in your deck? Well, we got that for you, baby. Are you making tokens in your deck? Well, why you want a ramp with those? Go ahead. And obviously the card itself is self-perpetuating, makes tokens in a really easy way. Obviously it's meant to work with collect evidence in this environment, but it works for a number of other things, you know. I was going to say flashback, but I think that spells are the ones with flashback. I guess it works with unearth, works with disturb, works with anything that brings a creature from your graveyard to your hand, works with any reanimation card, works with anything like graveyard trespasser that maybe 1/1, Lord Skitter or King, whatever it's called. Lord Skitter, Sewer King, that's it. Cards that like once per turn will take a card out of a graveyard, and we've seen a few of those in this set. So there are tons of ways to make this pop off. You just have to fill your graveyard, which is not hard in this color combination especially. You know, I'm already a big proponent of the Stick Fingers deck in Standard, but whenever I talk about a non-creature card in that deck, I always feel like I have to mention that that deck needs to play a critical mass of creatures, while also hopefully still playing, you know, the odd removal spell, or maybe even a Ghoul Caller's Harvest, or like some other big thing, Squirming Emergence, like whatever big spell you feel like your Stick Fingers deck wants. Some people play, you know, like the 3-mana Saga that gives your creatures trample at the end of it, to kind of break through. I've seen people play Audacity in that deck. Those slots have been used in weird ways. But the problem is, again, that at the end of the day, it's the kind of deck that wants to have like 30 creatures, and you don't have all the slots for stuff like this. You also, in that deck, have to make tokens. The best way to do that in that deck is probably to play something like Teachings of the Kirin, which puts 2 tokens onto the battlefield for 2 mana and mills you what you want in that deck. The problem is, again, how many non-creature cards can you actually play in that deck? So you're playing Roots and Teachings now, plus other stuff. I have a hard time believing that it's particularly good in that deck, but this does ramp you towards like bigger Stick Fingers, and there's often turns where you want to double spell in that deck, play like a Stick Fingers and a Souls of the Lost or whatever it's called, or a Cruel Somnophage, or, you know, Stick Fingers and removal spell. There's a ton of stuff that you want to do in that deck, and you tell I've played it a lot, so I'm not actually convinced that deck plays A, enough token makers to take advantage of this, and B, wants to have more non-creature slots taken up by cards like this. That said, again, card is self-perpetuating in a deck that does mill itself for maybe other reasons. Stick Fingers doesn't even have to be in the Stick Fingers deck, which is a weird thing to say, but it's true. Stick Fingers is often the worst card in the Stick Fingers deck. So if you're mostly looking to fill your board with plants and eventually make them relatively huge, and it doesn't even take that long, then this might just be, you know, basically the card you build your entire deck around. So, sick card, gross card, great art, by the way. I really like the art. But aside from all that, just a banger of a card, dude. Really, really cool thing here, and I like it maybe more than most of the cards we'll look at today, even though we're about to move into the rares. Do I think it will be used in Standard? This is $1 million question, isn't it? Ultimately, if I had to make a judgment call, I'd say there's a 75% chance this is not playable in Standard. I hate to say it, but it's probably true. That said, that still leaves a 25% chance, and a quarter is much better than nothing, you know? So, all depends on what sort of support we have around it. We already have some cards that I've mentioned, like Teachings of the Kirin, again, is fantastic with this card, but there's a number of cards that make tokens in Standard that are decent in this color combination. And obviously you add white in your Abzan deck, you get like your Wedding Announcement and stuff. So, but that said, I do think, you know, Wedding Announcement, Wandering Emperor and stuff like that, they're really tempting and probably do end up in this deck. But what you actually want is creatures that put tokens on the board, right? Because you want to have a critical mass of creature cards in your yard or in your deck so that this ability will pop, right? The second ability. But you also have to have a fair number of tokens, but I think you're more concerned about just having creature cards enter and then leave your graveyard, because this card will make tokens for you. But I still think to really make the card truly playable, you need to have bodies that are actually creatures with the type creature that will go into your graveyard, but also like make dudes when they enter or leave play is probably how you want to juice this card. So I think it's really good. I think it's really, really good. Standard play, it's a tough call. It really is. I think it's great. Coveted Falcon is up next. 3 mana, 1 and 2 blue for a 1/4 artifact creature bird with flying. And when it attacks, you gain control of target permanent you own but don't control. And you disguise this for 1 and a blue. When Coveted Falcon is turned face up, target opponent gains control of any number of target permanents you control. Draw a card for each one they gain control of this way. Okay, so really not great. I feel like the most utility you can get out of this, especially in limited, is just like a 3 mana 1/4 flyer. The best thing this does, but probably not. I mean, it's just going to draw you a card. But I feel like the sequencing is very, very weird. You have to turn it face up before it attacks. Give your opponent one of your things, and then attack with it right after you spend mana on, main phase 1. It's a little bit awkward, but I think what this card wanted to say is when it turns face up, draw a card. So if you look at this as just like 3 mana 1/4 flyer, disguise for 2 mana, turn it face up and draw a card. It's not terrible. It's really not. I swear to you, 5 mana 1/4 flying, draw a card is like, okay. It's fine. It's fine. You do have to wait a turn to actually draw the card off of it, technically, unless you can give it haste somehow. But altogether, I'm not like super excited about it. But again, this is one of the cards I think has fun design. And once you grasp the disguise mechanic, which isn't too hard to do, it's another one of those kind of simple cards that has like a neat design. And sometimes that's all that you need is, I like the way they use the mechanic here. And that's all I really have to say about it. Again, in limited, I do think it's just going to be like a flyer that draws you a card, and there is kind of nothing wrong with that, But Incinerator of the Guilty is up next. This is 6 mana, 4 and 2 red for a 6/6 dragon with flying and trample that's going to win a game of Sealed every now and again, because when it deals combat damage to a player, you may collect evidence X. When you do, Incinerator of the Guilty deals X damage to each creature and each planeswalker that player controls. My goodness. It even has trample to like help it get through, and if it gets through for even a single damage, which it probably will, you just raise their entire team. Raise with a Z, their entire team. Pretty easily, even if you only have like a 4-drop or 3-drop in your yard, you're going to take out most of their dudes with this thing if it gets through for combat damage. And at that point, you win the game, because not only have you gotten through with a 6/6 flample, but you've also probably killed all their guys in like a one-sided wrath, which is just... Who? You want to talk about a bomb in limited? This is the guy. I don't think he's like standard playable. I think he's got big stats, and I think Flample is worth, pointing out. But there's multiple like huge Flample dudes for 6 mana in standard, and I don't think they're great in the first place. So you have to wait till this attacks, and then you have to set it up and blah, blah. In standard, I think there's just way better things you could be doing. You have to be ridiculous as a 6-drop. You probably have to have haste, so we're not talking about it there, even as a mythic, but... In limited, boy, this is one of the biggest bombs in the set. It's a must remove. If they don't, they're going to die to it just through combat damage alone, but they're definitely going to die to it when it blows away all their stuff. So just an absolutely silly creature in that format. If you see this in your sealed pool when you go to pre-release, you're playing red. Let's move on to officious interrogation. Yeah, give him death touch. You only have to collect evidence 1. User ID killer. That's why we keep you around here. Thanks for the tip. Naj96, thanks for the prime sub for 9 months. You're awesome. Flower Bridge, thanks for your follow, as well as Xavion333 and Goodyear. You've all followed recently, and I just want to point you out. You also made the YouTube video. That's what you get for following. That's just the power of following. Let's look at officious interrogation here. This is 2 mana, sort of. Blue and a white for an instant that cost a blue and a white more to cast for each target beyond the first. Choose any number of target players. Investigate X times, where X is the total number of creatures those players control. No guest was permitted to leave before being questioned in an Azorius Verity Circle. Hey, I get that reference. Verity, that's a card, Verity Circle. So it's a commander card in my standard set, and I don't mind that. Just for the record, you know, like I see a lot of people in my comments section, literally every single preview season, being like, oh, the commander cards in my standard set, or this entire set is designed for commander, which is not usually true, but it's the way people feel, and you can't take that away from them. I respect it. And this is obviously a commander card, but however, I should point out before somebody else does, because I know you will, that in a 2-player game, you can still target you and your opponent with this. And that's okay. It's pretty good. This could actually, just for 2 mana, this could lead to a pretty easy 3 or 4 investigates. And that's actually kind of gross, you know? And if you're in your, blue-white deck that does play the Wedding Announcements and the Wandering Emperors and stuff, then like you might have 3 guys on the table. Like it's fairly easy to say that if you pump 4 mana into this, you can get like 6 investigates, 5, like fairly easily. And that's actually that's a fantastic rate. And like on the odd casting where you catch your opponent, they have like 5 dudes out or whatever, and you get like 5 investigates, and then like at the end of their turn, you investigate, you get like 4 or 5 dudes, or 4 or 5 clues. And then on your turn, you untap and cast Sunlaw, Well, now I have an incubator token and like 5 clues. So you lose the game. You know what I mean? So I actually think this card is tempting. It is tempting to say like, it's commander card, my standard, get your peanut butter out of my jelly. But like, I actually think this is probably standard playable, depending. Like maybe it's a sideboard card or something like that. But again, I just keep thinking about that line where like turn 4, you take your lumps from their attack step or whatever. Maybe you remove a guy, and then EOT, you get 3 clues off of this. And then you untap and wipe their board and get an incubator token, and you just you're set. Like you're set for life at that point. So it's hard for an opponent to dig out of that. Like, oh, I've just got 3 cards waiting on me and a 3 or 4/4 in my incubator token. So I don't know, dude. It just seems like not like busted or anything, but like probably better than it's going to look to a lot of people at first glance. So I like it. I think it's easily one of the better cards of the day. Could you target yourself twice? No, I don't think you can do that. Good thinking, though. I do like the way you think. Choose any number of target players. No, you can't do that. It's a good question, though. Now, move on to 10th District Hero here. This is 2 mana, 1 and a white for a 2/3 human, and you can pay 1 and a white again. You can just pay its casting cost again and collect evidence too. And 10th District Hero becomes a human detective with base power and toughness 4/4 and gains vigilance. You can also, again, pay 2 and a white and collect evidence 4. If 10th District Hero is a detective, it becomes a legendary creature named Maleva, Stalwart Hero with base power and toughness 5/5, and other creatures you control have indestructible. Good lord. So, what is that? A total of 7 mana? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep, 3, 2, 2. That is 7. Good job. Thanks, first grade. I appreciate my education. Collect evidence 4 on the second mode. So, in the aggro deck this wants to go in, that's probably equal to removing 2 creatures from your yard, which shouldn't be too hard to do. You know what this is for some reason like reminding me of? Squee. I know that it isn't. It's supposed to remind me of like Evolved Sleeper and all the creatures in a similar vein. Figure of Destiny and blah, blah, blah. But this weirdly reminds me of Squee, even though it's not. It never comes back from your graveyard, right? But you do have to, much like Squee, take stuff out of your graveyard to make it work. And there's something, I don't know, there's just something to it. I know Squee is such a weird comparison. And feel free to go to the comment section and be like, you're dumb, because I know you're going to do it anyway without my explicit blessing. But for some reason, just like an aggro card that you have to remove stuff from your graveyard to make it work. I think that the first mode is fairly easy to pop off. You know, you lose one of your creatures, or maybe you cast a removal spell. You cast Get Lost. And suddenly you can make this dude a 4/4. Now, it costs you 4 mana for your 4/4 vigilance. Still costs you a total of 4 mana. But I like the idea of casting this on 2. And then on turn 4, again, casting that removal spell. And then that very same turn, boom. You can probably blow people out in combat that way. Like they go to attack into you. Or conversely, you attack into them. I mean, this works either way. Once blocks are made, you can just get rid of one of their dudes with a removal spell and immediately, you know, there's no speed restriction on this. Turn this into a 4/4. And again, you could blow people out that way. You kind of missed the trick on the vigilance in that situation, but it's still fine. And then obviously the last mode, a total of collect evidence 6 on this card, which again in your aggro deck might be harder to get than you think, but I'm not sure this actually goes in aggro. Like the more I look at it, the more I think like mid-range kind of card, but even then, you know, a mid-range white deck plays on curve. You play this on 2. How do you play Wedding Announcement on 3? How do you play, you know, Wandering Emperor on 4? Maybe that's the trick, right? You leave up your mana on turn 4. You don't attack. And then you wait to see if they give you a reason to play Wandering Emperor, or if you just rather blow them out with removal spell plus leveling up this guy. I don't know. At least it gives you options. And then obviously the last mode wants you to be in a creature heavy deck, but you don't have to do this till the late game, you know, and again, in that theoretical mono white deck that I'm talking about that plays Announcement on 3 and Wandering Emperor on 4 and these other like token Z cards. Obviously you can kind of sit on this until the late game and wait until you have the 3 tokens from Announcement, the Announcement's flipped over, they're getting a little bit bigger, 2 tokens from Wandering Emperor, you know, you got a little bit of a board going, suddenly a 5/5 and all your tokens are indestructible is pretty good. So I think this card's fine. I like I like any creature that's a mana sink like this and like gets bigger the more mana you put into it. But I think that if you had to compare it to the card in standard that it's most comparable to, Evolved Sleeper, I think Evolved Sleeper is just a better card. And it doesn't see that much play. Like even when Mono Black was a real deck, it's weird to say it's not anymore, but even when Mono Black was a real deck when in tournaments and stuff, like the 4 Evolved Sleeper deck was not exactly the most popular version of that deck. So I don't know. I've talked a long time about TDH here, but I think that she is fine, but I struggle to see where she finds a home, especially considering the sort of power level we have at the 2-drop slot in standard. And the fact that even in the humans deck, you've got like 4 humans you'd rather play over her. You know, Coppercoat Vanguard and Thalia are the 2 that come straight to mind, but there are others. So I'm not like convinced this is great, but in 2012, this card would have been insane. But now I don't know, man. But let's move on to Yaris, Roar of the Gods, 4 mana, 2, a red and a green for a 4/4 legendary centaur druid. And the best line of text on the card is the first line of text. Other creatures you control have haste. Whenever 1 or more face-down creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, draw a card. Whenever a face-down creature you control dies, if it's a permanent card, return it to the battlefield face-down under its owner's control, and then turn it face-up. So hot stuff, baby, this evening. Looking for some hot stuff, baby, tonight. We found it. This is a good card. In limited especially, right? But I guess it gives us a reason to want to do like a disguise deck in standard, even though I don't think it's quite there. You want to ramp into this, probably with the disguise mole, if you can help it. The little 2-mana disguise dork in this set. Ramp into this on 3, and then your 4-drop has haste. You can also pretty easily, after the turn after you play this, plunk down a disguise creature. Still have mana left over. And if, you know, you ram in that disguise creature and they actually block it and kill it, suddenly you're just going to get the creature anyway, which is really powerful. This last line of text is very powerful. And it's potentially even powerful in standard, but a card that you kind of have to wait until you untap on turn 4 or 5 with is usually not like the best card in the world. It facilitates, you know, it needs face down stuff, which I just don't think we're going to be doing too much of in standard. So I don't really love it there. But obviously a fervor, you know, other creatures you control have haste is just a fine line of text in and of itself in almost any Gruul deck. So it's got that going for it. It does, but this isn't exactly a bomb in limited. I wouldn't necessarily go so far as to call it that. But it is decently on curve, you know, on rate sort of body for the mana cost. The first line of text is bonkers. And honestly, these 2 lines, you know, if they block and kill your 2/2s, you just get them anyway. And if they don't block your 2/2s, you draw cards. So really silly card, given that you draft enough disguise stuff and limited. I think it is very, very good there. But we'll move on to Expedited Inheritance. That's a way of putting it. It's just 2 red mana for an enchantment. Whenever a creature is dealt damage, its controller may exile that many cards from the top of their library. They may play those cards until the end of their next turn. Great wealth is often incompatible with peaceful inheritance. Well, really knocking it out of the park with the flavor text in the set. But this is symmetrical. In case you didn't notice, this doesn't just work for you, which is weird, especially considering the card is red. And it turns every creature into a Feldon. Isn't that how this works? It turns every creature on the table into a Feldon. And that is interesting, but you're the one with the creatures running into combat all willy-nilly, let me attack. And you're the ones with the burn spells. So I don't know, dog. I will say, this is a lot of card draw in the right red deck, but only against certain decks. If I'm up against control, this doesn't really do much. Not really. Not really. So I think it's neat. I think that it's probably pretty powerful even in EDH, where it's just this global effect that has this massive, effect on the game state for every player and is really, really fun there. I think that that's a cool application for the card. In Standard, I don't know how we either break the symmetry, right? Or if the game, if symmetry doesn't matter in that game, that's usually bad because it means that our creatures aren't being dealt any damage anyway. We're playing against control or something, and they just don't have blockers. So I don't know. I guess the incentive here is, let's say I'm playing mono red. I'm playing Monastery Swift Spears and stuff like that. If I'm playing against Wedding Announcement and Wandering Emperor, just cards I'm going to bring up over and over, apparently, in this video. But if I'm playing against Small Fry tokens and stuff like that, then now they don't want to block my guys. Because, they get to draw cards, but I also get to draw cards. And I'm aggro. I don't actually have a first main phase. So, I have the mana to play the cards. You know what I mean? The same turn that I get them. Which is, I guess, how the symmetry is technically broken in an aggro deck, is the aggro player theoretically on second main gets to play these cards first if 2 creatures run up against each other. So this is a mill card in my mind. Kane, I love you. You're still at the arcade, but you have the best ideas. Now, I have returned. You're not at the arcade anymore. Yeah, that's actually a great point. It's a mill card. Especially if you can just overload, expel a creature just to death. I'm going to deal 16 to this dude. It's effectively mill 16. That's pretty disgusting. Does this go with that expel we just saw in black? It's exile the top X cards of their library, we're building this deck. It's a lot of mythics, but we're building this deck. I did think it's great. I think it's a cool card. And again, I just want to play it in a game of Commander to see what happens. Probably expedites the game if nothing else, but altogether, I do have my doubts about this card in Standard. Just, again, symmetry is sometimes fine, but I don't know if it is in this case. We'll move on to Krenko's Buzz Crusher. This is somehow not my favorite card of the day. Yes, this is my favorite card of the day. We're still going to reload Mythic Spoiler before we stop the YouTube portion of this video, but Buzz Crusher is a pretty gnarly card to me. 4 mana, 2 and 2 red for a 4/4 Insectopter. It's an artifact creature too. And it has Flample. So 4 mana, 4/4 Flample. Flying and trample. And when it ETBs, for each player, destroy up to 1 non-basic land that player controls. For each land destroyed this way, its controller may search their library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. Holy crap. So it's not like Avalanche Riders, but I guess you could make the case it's better than Avalanche Riders. Avalanche Riders is 4 mana for 3 and a red for a 2/2 human berserker, let's say. It's got haste and echo. That means you have to pay its casting cost again the turn after you play it. When it ETBs, destroy target land. So, Avalanche Riders was always a 4 mana Stone Rain on a body. with haste, and that was a great card back in the day. This is 4 mana for not a Stone Rain. It's kind of a Field of Ruin activation, but, you know, a 4/4 Flample is something you got to deal with, and it's going to blow up an important resource for your opponent, usually a tri-land in most cases, in Standard at least. And you can target yourself. I guess I want to throw that out here. You can target yourself. The card will come into play tapped, unlike, you know, a Field of Ruin effect or whatever. But it is neat that you can kind of thin your deck if you want to. You can also put like a Boseiju or a Takenuma or some other like channel land into your graveyard so you can get it back later. You know, that's one, I guess, use of this ability. If you need to use it on yourself. This is another one that it's tempting to be like, oh, this is a commander card because it says for each player and blah, blah, blah. But no, I think that they've actually done a good job of addressing that exact gripe with this card the same way they did with that Azorius card a couple of cards ago. You know, yeah, it's a commander card, still looks playable in Standard. I think this is nuts. Yeah, it blows up Lotus Field, Owl's Watch, good point. Wait, does it? Lotus Field? Does Lotus Field not have like hexproof? Am I thinking of the wrong thing here? I thought Lotus Field had hexproof. But am I wrong? Can you target yourself twice though? Nice. I know you lol, JK. I will say though that this is probably far and away the best card of the day. I mean, I have some other picks. You know, I really like officious interrogation. I think it's way better than it looks. But just as far as like pure power, we're really getting to see some big red cards. You know, I feel like mono green and big red are some like real winners in this set. And honestly, Gruul too. You know, that mole that we saw the other day, like 8/4 that gives you multiple attack steps. The thing is crazy. That is a standard playable card. So green and red, some winners here, especially expensive red cards in this set. And this is just, I don't know, man. They didn't have to put trample on it. The fact that it's an artifact might actually matter in some situations. So there's that. And I just really like the ETB trigger on this, like kind of a lot. And obviously I should point out that against like Domain and stuff like that, this might just be a straight up Stone Rain. You know, if they didn't build their deck right and they failed to add the basic lands they needed to add, then suddenly you just blow them out in a way. You know, a Stone Rain plus a 4/4 Flample is going to be really hard for a lot of ramp decks to deal with if they can't pull that basic. But obviously ramp decks will play, you know, Invasion of Zendikar and Topiary Stomper. So they usually come equipped with basic lands. But every now and again you'll catch like them or an Esper player or something else that just didn't include basic lands, and they're going to have a terrible day against this card. So I just think it's really strong. Maybe in the top like 15 cards or so that we've seen in the set in terms of power level, but upon further reevaluation, when I do like the top 25 list, don't be surprised if this creeps into the top 10, because this is a really good Magic card. I'm not going to stake my career on it, but like, I'm fairly certain that not only is this a good card, but they pushed it. They put the tramples on it, man. That trample is getting me. I really think they pushed this on purpose to be standard playable in a number of ways. So really like this card, man. Let's, though, reload the Mythic spoiler. I actually think MTG Previews is the site I'll try to go to first. This is an unexpected setback, or at least that's the translation we're getting of it right now. 4 mana, 2 and 2 blue for an instant. The owner of target non-land spell or permanent puts that spell at the top or bottom of their library. Ooh, that's okay, man. So, jeez. Wow. So it can target spells on the stack, and it can target just permanents in play. It's instant speed, and it fluxes. It doesn't just like bounce. It actually like puts the card on top. That's not bad. You can't use it like a Plow Under, which I don't know how much I love. I wish you could actually hit lands with this like Plow Under. In case you don't know, in case you've never been hit by a Plow Under effect, it is 1,000,000 times more annoying than you think it is, which is exactly why this says non-land. God, putting 2 lands on top of your library is agonizing. Plow Under is a gross card, in case you've never had to play against it. That should be my next old school card of the day. Yeah, Memory Lapse, kind of a Venser without a body that but tops the card. This will probably top the card 9 times out of 10. But whether it tops or bottoms, YouTube's going to demonetize me for this card alone. But, you know, whether it's topping or bottoming, I'm happy with it, which is true of my personal life too. But it's just actually a pretty good little piece of cardboard, man. That ain't terrible, man. We concerned that much about Tyrannax Rex? You still have to pay the 4 mana for its ward. You're targeting it, you know. I guess on the stack you don't. Right? This does get around uncounterability on the stack. And that's a thing to say. I don't hate this, man. 4 mana is probably too much for this. Especially when you start looking at it like a counter spell. Like when you start looking at it like a memory lapse, you're like, not as good. But people forget that memory lapse is good specifically because it makes you draw the same spell again. It's agonizing. It's horrible. So, you know, I got half a mind. I know, don't flatter myself, but I got half a mind to say this card is fine, man. Seriously, I don't dislike it. So, what is this other card? What are you? Who are you? Excuse me. Who are you? It's Case File Auditor. Who's this guy down here just putting stuff on a salad? Let's get rid of him. Case File Auditor is 3 mana, 2 and a white for a 1/4 human detective. When Auditor of Judicial Records enters the battlefield, and whenever you resolve a case, I'm sure that's just solve a case, right? Either way. Let's go back. When Auditor of Judicial Records, that's a mouthful, enters the battlefield, and whenever you solve a case, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal 1 enchantment card from among them, put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of library in a random order. You may use mana as if it were mana of any color to cast case spells. That's a neat little last line of text there. That doesn't even have to be on there. You may use mana as though it were any color to cast cases. That's really cool. That's just a cool line of text, and I like it. This, though, is an ETB trigger, so you never even have to resolve a case. For this to be good, it's obviously supposed to find other cases, but it doesn't have to. You just find enchantments, you know. Is this commander playable? Is this commander playable? Like, I have a Sithis deck, you know, and I'd really like to build one with the Bant lady. She was just in the $50 or the top $51 cards, and I can never remember her name. But I have built, you know, enchantment commander decks before. Would I put this in? Maybe. This is not quite a tutor, but 6 cards is a big dig. And if you have like 3 or 4 cases in your deck, then you might trigger this again. And like, that's really good. So I'm really close. Kestia, that's her name. The Bant lady that cares about enchantments. Thank you. It's Kestia. I think this is pretty good. Yeah, I think one of the commander decks is confirmed to have a bunch of cases in it. So this is probably in that. And really good in it too. I think if you know, I've just said if you're playing 6 cases, if you're playing like 10 or 12 cases in Commander, this is fantastic. But obviously in your enchantments deck, you're playing like 35 enchantments or more, you know. So this will almost hit something. This will always hit something. And this card's good. This card's just good, right? I don't think it's like standard playable. I don't think like the case, like 5 color cases is a great deck, but boy, we'll try it. We will try it. And this could, you know, make it a reasonably budget deck too. A lot of the cases are uncommon, you know. So it might be a fun one to put together. I like this dude, man. It's 3 mana for 3 mana 1/4 draw card. 3 mana 1/4 draw card. Okay, we're cooking, man. We're in the kitchen, you know. It's not bad. We're not getting a Michelin star, but we're serving somebody a tasty hamburger, you know. It's fine. I'll take that card. I'll take it out to lunch. I'll take it on a date. I don't know what's wrong with me. Let's do another reload real quick just to make sure we're not missing anything hot. Somebody, Instagoose, you don't have an ad blocker. You should get uBlock Origin. I'll address this one more time. I don't block ads. I am a content creator. I get paid through ads, and I respect other smaller websites and creators that also get paid through ads. So as a spiritual, you know, love for them, out of respect for knowing that sites like this and Mythic Spoiler, are probably run by relatively small teams and they need all of their ad money that they can possibly get, I don't turn on ad blocker. It's the same reason that I don't turn on ad blocker on YouTube, because I'm a YouTuber and I get paid when you see ads. And it turns out every single YouTuber is the same way. This is not a rant against ad blocker. Please block ads if you want to, and it leads to a better experience and a less stressful life. But I'm just explaining to you why I don't watch, why I don't block ads. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying you have to do that if you're a bad person, if you do block ads. Block ads away. I don't care. It's totally fine. I'm not saying that. Just, I'm telling you my reasons. Let's look at Breakout here. This is 2 mana, red and a green for a sorcery. Look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them. If that card has mana value 2 or less, you may put it onto the battlefield and it gains haste until end of turn. If you didn't put the revealed card onto the battlefield this way, you may put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Is this like Modern playable with some of the stuff you can do in Modern? Like Snapcaster off the top of your library? Is that even good anymore? Is that even a thing? Oh, Tarmogoyf off the top of your library. It's like it's 2015, you know? Cool card, though. It's just kind of like 2 mana, draw a card and Gruul. You know, much worse Coco. Yeah, exactly. much worse Coco in a way. Altogether, though, I think it's a cool card, which I've said about a lot of cards. Not just tonight, but in this set. But sometimes those are my favorite Magic cards. You know, I think some people get really stoked about like massively powerful Magic cards, and I do too. And cards you can do fun stuff with. But sometimes I just like a cool card. And this is it, man. It's basically just pays you back the exact same mana value that you put into it to put a creature on the table. And that's probably good, especially if you get a decent ETB trigger. Like, a fine card. I can see why it's just an uncommon. The flavor text is fun. Hey, kiddo, your ride's here. Like, the art is giant busting through a wall. It's just an action movie like Michael Bay one-liner? I'm not sure. They tried. Fun card, though. Fun card. But let's move on. I'm so glad we have more spoilers. I'm so glad we have more time together. Let's look next at Toxin Analysis. This is a single black mana for an instant. Target creature gains Death Touch and Lifelink until end of turn. Investigate. So I like all these like 1 mana investigate things. I really do. I think 1 mana instant speed investigate isn't like good enough, but it's close. And you basically just get to kill anything in combat that you want to. So it won't go in every limited deck, but it'll go in a few. It's not bad. It's half solid, but not all the way. Inside Source is up next. This is 3. We were talking earlier, like right at the top of the stream, about like how some of the cards, the names are too on the nose for some people, or they're too genre specific for some people. I love that. I love all the genre specific names. I really do. I feel like when you do a thing like this, you have to use them. You have to take that opportunity to use names like this. Inside Source is 3 mana. 2 and a white for a 1/1 human citizen. When it ETBs, create a 2/2 white and blue detective creature token. Okay. You can pay 3 and tap it and target detective you control. Gets +2/+0. Gains vigilance till end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery. I was never here. So you get a rat, basically. You get a rat. And I guess that's what a rat would do, right? Well, you give the detective information, and that's represented by a power and vigilance boost. I kind of like that. Just a little bit. In terms of flavor, it's cool. And it's a 3 mana 3/3 in a way. It puts 2 dudes into play. This is not a bad Magic card, especially considering it's a common. When you consider the options we have at 3 mana just in standard, it's not good outside of a vacuum, but 3 mana for 2 guys is, especially at the correct rate. 3 mana, 3 power, 2 different guys. Could be worse. Could definitely be worse. But we will definitely also move on here, ladies and gentlemen, as long as I can get the page to move down to Reasonable Doubts. Again, you got to use these names. I don't begrudge them using these names. 2 mana, 1 and a blue for an instant. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 2. Suspect up to 1 target creature. Okay, well, it's probably not as good as Make Disappear or anything, but it's the counter it unless they pay 2 plus set mechanic card in this set, and I guess it's fine. You don't have to suspect the creature. You don't have to suspect the creature if you don't want to. So just a fine counter spell with upside. And so you can't really complain about that, right? Person of Interest up next. This is 4 mana, 3 and a red for a 2/2 human rogue. And when it ETBs, suspect it. Create a 2/2 white and blue detective creature token. So again, here you get 4 mana, 4 power, 2 different guys. Okay. You know, that's okay. I guess one of the guys has menace, but altogether it's not great. We just see a couple of cards here at the end of the night that help us go wide in limited. And going wide is going to be somewhat important. I like that both bodies you get on that card can take out, you know, a face down guy. So that's something to think about in limited. But what do we have? A couple, 2 more cards left today. Let's look at Thinking Cap first, because Soul Innervation looks really cool. But Thinking Cap is one of the cards you can go grab with the card that we saw yesterday. It's a single mana for an equipment. It equips for 3. Equipped creature gets +1/+2, but you can equip a detective for a single mana. That's not a very good card. I'm sorry, it's not a great card, but it's there. It exists. It's the whole reason why I decided to talk about this card before this next card, because I was pretty sure this wasn't going to be much, and it's there. It's fine. It's fine. It's there. It's whatever. It's a card. So let's move on to Soul Innervation, which does have a frame treatment, so maybe it's a halfway cool card. 4 mana. 3 into black for an enchantment with flash. Okay. When it ETBs, target creature gets -4/-4 till end of turn. Okay. Jack Nicholson meme where he's like, okay. Whenever 1 or more creatures leave your graveyard, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Sorry if I just bust your eardrums out. I tried to do it far enough away from the mic that it wouldn't destroy you, but that's a fun line of text right there, baby. This is commander playable. 100%. Like, I've got, you know, Judith decks, I've got Elisol Core decks. I'm already kind of building the Kaiser deck for when that card comes out in like June, you know. So this probably slots directly in. I mean, if it's flash, it's a removal spell. That's kind of interesting in and of itself, but incremental damage for the rest of the game and life gain too. Like, let's go on that. This goes in Dina. This could easily go in Dina. Oh my God. Yeah, dude. Like, I'm building Dina literally right now. I just did the video where I asked you to like help me pick my next commander, and a lot of you said Dina, so I just went ahead and pulled the trigger on it. This card looks fantastic in that deck, doesn't it? So really neat, dude. 4 mana is a bit steep. You know, I guess that's the only real complaint. I have to point it out, is the 4 mana is a bit steep for a removal spell, but at least you get instant speed. You get the enchantment type, which, you know, that could matter for one reason or another. Maybe it works in the Ariette of the Charmed Apple decks. You know, that's kind of cool. So, I don't know, dude. I really like this card. Just really love this last line of text. I love all the, you know, whenever a creature leaves your graveyard, pay off. A lot of those cards are really cool in this set. And this is maybe my favorite one we've seen so far. You guys just know I love Drains. I love Drains, dude. So I'm destined to love this card. But I'm actually really glad we get to end the video, or the spoiler part of tonight on it, because this is sick. I also love that it references Judith, like in case you don't know what deck to try to play it in. It's probably Judith, especially with a number of cards that are currently in like all the Aristocrats commander decks. Like, what is it? Phyrexian Reclamation or Phyrexian Rebirth or something. An enchantment that just lets you bring cards back and forth. Does this work with Tortured Existence the way I want it to? I think it probably does. Let me go back to Chrome where I already have Scryfall. Tortured. Oh, no, it's creature cards, isn't it? It's creature cards, so it doesn't work. No, yeah, it does. Choose and discard a creature card, return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So in Tortured Existence loops, this wins, right? Holy God. Yeah, Tortured Existence loop, just drain as much as you have the mana for. Seems really, really good. Seems so good, dude. That's so good. I want to play this in Commander so bad. It's not all, like, there's a lot of times where I see a card and I'm like, oh, that's good in Commander. It's not often I see a card and I'm like, I want to play that in Commander, and this is it. This is it right here. This is it. I also think it's halfway. I really do think this could be standard playable. I really do, man. I think there might be a combo set up with this card. Anything that allows you to just... Is there anything in standard right now? I've been thinking about this for like 2 days and haven't come up with anything, so I hope I'm just not really stupid. But is there anything in standard with like an activated ability that's just like remove a card from your yard? Just remove one card from your yard at a time, and then do activated ability. Doesn't require a tap. You know, like, is there anything that you can just one by one completely exile all the cards from your yard? But it has to be one trigger at a time, because, you know, all these say one or more. So if you remove 7 creatures from your yard at the same time, you still only get 1 drain. All these cards work that way. So it has to be something that, preferably for free, just allows you to exile 1 creature from your graveyard at a time for free, again, multiple times a turn. And I don't think we have anything necessarily like that. But even with just a deck full of graveyard trespassers and stuff like that, this is still kind of fine. You know, with a deck full of reanimation or, you know, raised dead effects or whatever, this is still fine. Tenacious Underdog, you know, this procs off Tenacious Underdog when it leaves your graveyard. That's kind of neat. Sanitarium Skeleton isn't standard, but isn't it? But it's still probably not good enough. You know, because it costs so much mana. Is Sanitarium Skeleton in standard? Am I stupid? There's like some kind of skeleton like it in standard. No? Oh, well, Shadows over Innistrad, that's old. It's not in standard. I don't know why I thought this card was in standard. I feel like there's a card like it in standard, but I guess that's something to say. Like, it also works with skeletons and stuff like that. It's neat. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, 4 mana is a lot for standard, but at least it's a removal spell. At least it's instant speed. You know, I don't know if they pushed it enough for it to see play, but the fact that it's an instant speed removal spell that then gives you what? What's the average on this? You know, not the floor, not the ceiling, but what's the average number of drains off this in a game? 2? 3? So, removal spell that drains 3. Good enough? What if you get a second one in play? You know, not only is it a removal spell that, let's say, drains 2. Let's just say drains 2. Removal spell drains 2. But works really well in multiples. Like, fantastically well in multiples. Especially if you do have, like, a Tenacious Underdog. Then suddenly, you know, you're not losing any life to the underdog, and you're, you know, dealing an additional 2 damage to them every turn. I don't know. There's definitely something to this. Yeah, you look at the other black 4-drops in standard, though, and there's no contest. Like, you play Shieldred over this. You might play Massacre Girl over this. You might play Archfiend of the Dross over this. There's a number of really good cards in standard, but I guess if your deck is synergizing with it enough, you might be able to pull something off. I also think there might be, again, like in the Stick Fingers deck, just the one that has like 25 creature cards in its yard, there might be some sort of combo kill with this. You know what's interesting, by the way? One last thing is that this doesn't say up to 1 target creature. So your opponent really has to have a creature. Like, if you have a creature and your opponent doesn't, and you play this, one of your guys is getting -4/-4. It does not say target creature an opponent controls. It does not say up to 1 target creature. Like, that is a weird situational thing about the card you have to remember. So there is that, but still, I think a really cool design, and it's actually got me excited to play it a number of things. Again, even if it's not standard playable, there's multiple like commander combos with this line of text that I think are really exciting. So even if you're just doing like reassembling skeleton tricks, like you're doing good. It's a good card, man. And you'll always find you know, a use for the removal mode on it. This takes out, what, 93 or 4% of commanders out there, so you'll be doing fine. That's a good card, man. That's a good card. I guess what I should do is, since we just got a massive influx of new cards, I should probably reload this page again. I wonder what Chrome's problem is with, with MTG previews. I have no idea. But let's open Chrome. Reload Mythic spoiler. They still don't have the new cards. What's going on with that? But anyway, that is, to the best of my knowledge, all the previews up to this point in the present time as I record this video at 9:27 p.m. on January the 23rd, 2024. That is about all we've got for tonight. How'd you like them? How'd you like today's batch of previews? I feel like there was a number of really interesting stuff and good stuff, just plain good stuff. And, you know, you guys like that red 4/4 Flample guy that can blow up a non-basic when he comes into play? I like that guy. So you guys like the Azorius spell that can just investigate 4 like super easily? I like that spell. So altogether, another fine day of previews. We saw a fair degree of chaff, but there's also some really hot stuff out there. I like this set so far. I've said it over and over. I know there's some sort of pushback on that from some people, and we can all have our opinions and still kick it and chill and hang out and have fun and be good people to each other. But altogether, I like the way the set is kind of shaping up. C. Bolinder, thanks for your 24 months, 2 years for C. Bolinder. Here's you get to be in the YouTube video. Present for you. 2-year anniversary. That is not the paper anniversary. It's 10 and a 10. I forget. I used to know these things. By the way, Bolinder, thanks for your gifted subs as well. To Mystery Miyagi, in this case, thanks for the sub, man. Appreciate you. But that's all of the spoilers for tonight. There's a couple of more days left. We'll hit those on YouTube, and then I think either Sunday or Monday night, I will get back on stream, and we will do our vaunted, much praised series where I review every single card in the set and assign some sort of number grade to it. I will put myself through that for you on stream very soon, and I think in this set, we might actually be able to beat our personal best. We might be able to set a new world record for reviewing the entire set this time around. It's entirely possible. So be with us next time on stream for that. And if you're not a follower here on Twitch and you're watching this video on YouTube, link in the description or just twitch.tv/spmtgdev. You come over here and you can watch me make a fool of myself doing that and just tire myself out. It's a whole spectacle. We have fun. But altogether, if you just like this vibe and you wanted to be one of the people that I called out during the thing or talked to, or that you just like the idea of live spoilers and you want to talk to the people in chat while I give the spoilers and give your takes and stuff, and also it's a good reason to follow on Twitch. But anyway, that's all the stuff for tonight. Just if you are watching on YouTube, the YouTube stuff, before you leave, hit the like button on your way out. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. I think I only need like 20,000 subs, 25, 28,000 to get to 150. So, every little bit counts. We are on our way there. Aside from that, check out the Patreon. $1 a month. This is the best way to support any creator, because YouTube AdSense doesn't pay much, like at all. Twitch, to be honest, doesn't pay much. So really the best way that you can support your creator, make sure they stay on the platform that you enjoy them on, is Patreon. Just $1 a month. Link in the description. Helps out tremendously. And you can pick what decks and stuff we do, or at least vote on them with the rest of the crew over on the Patreon. But aside from that, I'm basically donezo for this onezo, and that is in fact Allski Kowalski. So let me know how you felt about today's previews, and I will catch you cats later. I'm Deb from The Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.